Closely with Undersecretary Hale to achieve meaningful improvements within DoD is Beth McGrath, its Deputy Chief Management Officer. Beth highlights her role and the role of her fairly young office in changing the way DoD does business.
So in 2005, we established the Business Management Modernization Program to look more holistically across the business enterprise and not just focus on the financials. And there, too, Congress recognized that we needed some more tools in our toolbox, if you will, to really go after the entire business space. So it is around that time that Congress legislated to us the utilization of a business enterprise architecture, enterprise transition plan, more effective governance, really the tools that most corporations have as they manage their overall operation. The Deputy Chief Management Officer position was established in the 2009 National Defense Authorization Act, and it was there that they created both the position of the Deputy Chief Management Officer and codified the role of the Deputy Secretary of Defense as the Chief Management Officer or Chief Operating Officer across the department. And that really elevated the conversation to be more holistic, not only within the OSD element, but also across the military departments. Because in that same legislation, they identified the undersecretaries of the military departments as the chief management officers for their respective components. So they really put the structure across the department, across all of the business lines, to effectively manage and oversee and integrate the entire business space.
Beth McGrath faces many challenges in her efforts to transform the business processes and operations of the U.S. Department of Defense.
I would say size creates a challenge because to try and implement something across an enterprise that is as big as the 16th country in the world would be, that doesn't happen overnight, nor does it happen very easily. And so really it's coming up with a framework that can be executed, replicated, and implemented across the defense enterprise is absolutely probably my top two challenges if I was able to account the size for the first two. But I would also add complexity to that list. Many of our operations have started, and when I say operations, I don't mean from a military perspective. The way we conduct business is very, very different. We are very non-standard. Frankly, by design, we were that way. So if you put size and complexity together, one would wonder why I would want this job. But I do think it's terribly exciting because it's also an opportunity to really make significant change in an enterprise that, really wants to and can execute in just the most tremendous ways. Building this coalition for change across the department, articulating the importance of the business mission and how it really facilitates and empowers and enables our core national security mission, I think is a tremendous opportunity. And so, size and complexity, yes, we have both, but we also have some of the best, people that, I certainly have had the opportunity to work with. And it's really getting to those people to enable the change and establish the change agents across the whole federation, if you will, is really a very exciting part of what I do.
In meeting many of her challenges head-on, McGrath outlines the department's strategy for improving its critical business operations.
The business enterprise architecture, and the way I characterize the architecture is that I've talked a little bit about the holistic approach and this end-to-end focus that we have in the department. The architecture is the place you write it down. So if you made agreement on a business process or a standard in a specific area, you need a place to write it down that everybody knows, it's going to be there. And so that is the blueprint, if you will, that drives the path ahead from a business perspective. So I mentioned that the BEA needs to align to a strategy for it to be purposeful and meaningful. The strategic management plan is the business strategic document. It's also aligned to the department's overarching strategic document, which is the quadrennial defense review. And there's an overarching goal in the QDR that talks about, implementing the reform agenda and really going after the business space. And that's where we hook, if you will, the SMP, the strategic management plan, to the overarching enterprise goals. The enterprise transition plan is the document that says, well, here's where I am today and here's how I'm getting to the future state. And so that really is the document that says, here's where I am today and this is the place I want to be, and then how we're going to get there and by when.
Focusing on DoD's core business missions is critical to changing the way it does business. Beth McGrath elaborates.
So the core business areas that we had previously defined, weapon systems, life cycle management, material supply and services, real property and infrastructure, financial management, and human resources. Those areas are very much aligned to the way DoD is organized. And we have really found that in order to drive business improvements or business operations, you really need to cut across the various functional areas. Those are all very functionally aligned, tied to an organization. And so we're really looking at, what are the end-to-end processes that we really need to go after? There are 15 that are in the commercial space, and we have chosen 2 of them to put our main focus on, and they are hire to retire and procure to pay. And it's really taking a look at defining what the high-level end-to-end process looks like. What standards do you need? What changes do you need to make? And what systems do you have that are currently executing those processes? You'd be amazed what you find when you start mapping sort of systems to process. And then, it is no secret that DoD has thousands of systems that are not interoperable. And so the goal here is to say, well, if I'm trying to execute an end-to-end process, which is what we do every day, then our system should be enablers to the execution of that process. And so it's, I'm going to say, not terribly exciting to some people to, map systems to processes. But when you see really the opportunity to make things better and more seamless, it's really hard not to do something about it. And so really we are mapping and aligning and documenting the various processes and standards because those are the things that make things go. I mean, we want it to be invisible to the operators out there. They don't need to know all about the procure to pay and hire to retire. At the end of the day, they just want their paycheck right, and they want it fast. They want the information reliable and accurate so that they can make decisions about, do I have enough cash to buy this or do I need to do something else? I mean, it's all about achieving business outcomes.
For McGrath, it's all about achieving business outcomes. Getting off the GAO high-risk list exemplifies her outcome-based approach.
So we spend a lot of time with our partners in the Government Accountability Office. DoD owns on its own 8 of the 30 and then shares another 7, which is how we own half. In the personal security clearance area, again, it was very much focused not only on the DoD backlog and transaction time, it was focused on the federal space because there were issues across the federal government about the backlog and then the time it took to actually get a security clearance. And so it was really a partnership with the Office of Personnel Management, who is the main investigative service provider for the federal government, the Office of Management and Budget, and the management side, the Deputy Director for Management, and the Office of the Director for National Intelligence, the DNI. And it really took everyone to do their piece, both a policy, process, and information technology, to enable us to get off the high-risk list. And so Lean Six Sigma, that is where we started. We essentially locked everyone in a room and said, we need to re-look at the process. And we did discover that there were changes that ought to be made in the federal investigative standards. And we had the people at the table, being the Office of Personnel Management and the Director of National Intelligence, because they own security policy from a federal perspective. So they are the policy owners, if you will. Step up and make changes to those federal investigative standards. And then we looked at the backlog, really put a lot of people on it in addition to IT, and we're able to take 100,000 case backlog for DoD down to 0. So that, to me, is a significant improvement. Also, our average security clearance time back then was 165 days. That was in 2006. And today it's roughly about 47 days. And so, that's tremendous.
As their perspectives indicate, Bob Hale and Beth McGrath has spearheaded a promising partnership between the CFO and DCMO communities with the U.S. Department of Defense. They are collaborators as well as leaders in making the Secretary's vision a reality. In the end, it's clear that their collective focus is on enhancing the department by making it more efficient, accountable, and strategic in its use of mission support resources, with the ultimate aim of providing the best possible support to the warfighter. How can analytics and risk management change the way government does business? We will explore this question and so much more when the special edition of the Business of Government Hour returns.